Hi, I'm Marilyn Manning, and I'm here with another edition of Taste Quincy. Right now, I'm in the kitchen of Quincy's newest hotspot, the Stadium in downtown Quincy Center. And with me is Ned Nichols, their star in the kitchen. Can you give us a little bit about what you're going to do today?
Yeah, today we're going to make one of the Stadium's staple dishes. We call it Not Your Mama's Meatloaf. We'll kind of explain that as we make it. We're going to make meatloaf. We're going to do it with a Chipotle ketchup today. And we're also going to serve a vegetable, which is a collard greens dish. It's a little non-traditional that we're going to make today. So basically those three things, one good plate of hearty winter food.
Let's get started.
Okay. We're going to start with, no disrespect to anyone's mother, but with Not Your Mama's Meatloaf. What I do, and this is how I do it, and therefore it's how the Stadium does it, we use three types of ground beef. Ground beef, ground pork, and ground veal. Flavor, fat, and texture. Looking for the flavor of the ground beef, the fat in the pork, and the veal is very tender, therefore giving us the texture we want in a meatloaf. I do not care for a dense meatloaf. The reason I call it Not Your Mama's Meatloaf is because my mama used like a hockey puck for a meatloaf. It was good, but it was very dense, and I'm not looking for that to be here today.
Tell me, Ned, that looks like about 3 pounds of meat.
This is 2 pounds apiece.
So
equal portions, 2, 4, 6 pounds. I'm going to make one large meatloaf today.
And that would serve how many? For those
that would serve at least 10, at least a good size of 10. You could cut this in half. I work in a restaurant business, so I already cut our recipe in half. But it's going to make one solid log. In my mind, that's dinner for 4, and then meatloaf sandwiches for the rest of the week.
Great.
So we're going to just incorporate these together a little bit. My technique is hands in and turn, just to kind of incorporate the different flavors and textures. And always catch the fly guys.
Is it better to have it not quite so cold? Is it
I've left this out for 20 minutes. I find that the colder it is, the denser it can be. And if you're going to try to incorporate flavors into ground meat, I think that's the way to go with it. I use Parmesan cheese in everything. I tend to go heavier on a little cheese, add flavor and texture, and lighter on the salt. When I use Parmesan cheese, I cut back on any salt I put in. And for me and my wife, it's always better for me to do less salt. And I think a lot of Americans are finding that these days as well. So again, just going to kind of get this mixed up a little bit. And then I use panko breadcrumbs. Now most Americans and traditional meatloaf recipes call for that I'm not going to say the name of the brand, but we all know it, that Italian breadcrumb. and I find that to be very, very dense. I think that's great for coating things. I coat meatballs before I fry them and that and stuff. But for me, I use panko breadcrumbs. Now they're also called Japanese breadcrumbs. You can find them pretty much these days in any supermarket. You may have to go to that aisle that's kind of like the non-American aisle. But if you don't have this, what I love to use for breadcrumbs at home is stale ciabatta bread. It's airy, it's got a great texture, a great chew to it, and I'm looking for something that's gonna like give lift for my meatloaf, not make it a very compact disc. So you'll see the panko breadcrumbs. I like
the lightness of it.
It's got a great lightness. You can crunch them. It's not a Rice Krispie, but it's got that kind of texture to it, which will give me what I'm looking for in a more airy meatloaf.
Now, for someone that has a lactose intolerance, for instance, that cheese, is that enough to be effective, or do you have to?
You could simply omit the cheese and then add maybe another tablespoon of salt to kind of get that flavor profile you're looking for. Very easily done. You know, my wife's a vegetarian. My daughter doesn't do dairy much at all. Every recipe can be adjusted. It's just a little common sense and figuring out what you want to taste instead of that. So for me, if you're going to pull the cheese out, you need a little more salt in the dish, because that cheese acts as like a salt for the beef.
Great.
And any meat product is nothing unless it's seasoned properly. I use ketchup. I think ketchup is
onions.
Ketchup is a great ingredient as far as adding like a velvety texture to a meatloaf.
A little sweetness in it too, doesn't it have a little
sweetness? It does. It has sweetness. It has a little bit of a vinegar flavor to it. Kind of gets those things going.
And I noticed you're putting in a red onion.
Diced
Is there
red
a
onion.
difference?
What's that? I use red onion. I think red onions have more flavor. I happen to, I used to own a restaurant called the Red Onion, so I have a preference for them. But
a special connection.
A special connection to the red onion. If I have to cut another red onion in my life, it'll be bad. Luckily, Michael chopped this red onion for us today. But I use red onions. You can use white. You can use Vidalia if you like the sweetness a little better. I like a little bit of a punch. Now, by the time this is done cooking, you're not going to have the punch, but that flavor is going to seep into the rest of the meatloaf.
Now, I noticed that you have everything here portioned out and labeled. Is that how you always cook, or are you doing that for us today?
My wife is not a fan of me because we have deals. I cook, she does dishes, but I cook like this at home. I just like the organization of it.
Pre-measured and all ready to go.
You know what? I write recipes for a living. It's what I do. And when I use someone else's, somebody's taking a lot of time to do a recipe, so measure it out. Do what they say. Don't just guess at it. This is roasted garlic. We roast garlic off every week, and we puree it. I love the background flavor of roasted garlic, and I put it in everything. This is my secret ingredient, and it's not a secret. It's A1 steak sauce. But I find that if you read what the ingredients of an A1 steak sauce is, it's just impeccable as far as adding it to flavors.
A lot of Worcestershire.
You know the commercial from years ago where you make that A1 steak burger? Well, I did that, and I loved it. And so
yeah,
I've been adding it to things. Thank you. A little cracked black pepper, 1 tablespoon.
And?
A little bit of kosher salt, 1 tablespoon. This I'm just going to show you. One of my favorite ingredients, chipotle peppers. I don't use it. I don't want a real spicy. But what I do is, this is called adobo sauce. That's the good sauce in there. That is second to none as far as flavor goes. And I add a tablespoon of that sauce to get that smokiness, a little bit of spicy, for a background flavor for my meatloaf.
Now that comes in a powder too, doesn't it? Adobo powder?
Adobo powder does, yes. They also use it to jar and smoked jalapenos. And then for the eggs, I'm gonna beat ahead. Michael, if you could grab me a fork.
Now they say that's wise, to break the eggs into a container before you add them to your recipe.
I think so, because you don't want to separate that. You know, pardon me, I'm just going to throw these away. You don't want to separate them too much. Here's the other thing that I do for my meatloaf to add a little more moisture and a little more tang. I add buttermilk. A little bit of buttermilk to the eggs. I give it a good whip. And I like the tang. You won't taste it, you won't know it's there, but it'll be a little bit of a more a moist texture to the meatloaf.
Does it help hold it together too?
The eggs really is what holds it together. Yeah. The dairy won't really hold it together, but I think it adds more moisture and a tang to my meatloaf that I really like.
Consistency is so important. There's nothing worse than cutting into something and have it fall apart.
Exactly. So I'm going to fold. I don't want to kill this. I just want to, again, that technique I was telling you about, 4 fingers in and kind of spinning it around a little bit, but I do want it well combined. So I'm going to spend about a second here putting this together. Mike, you can pull that sheet tray up for me.
Now, can I ask, can you use this mixture and make them into smaller loaves or meatballs?
Absolutely. You can do whatever you want. I would love to make this into a meatball. I don't think it's right for a meatball. Meatballs, to me, are much simpler. You know, one beef product with a little pork and veal as well, oregano, Parmesan cheese, a little salt and pepper. But I think with the A1 and all that other flavors in here, it's a little too complicated for a meatball. So now that I've got it incorporated, what I'm doing now is just kind of folding it on top of each other, trying to get it
kind of form
compact. Exactly.